The Song of the Lake Dwellers by me, Professor Lucius Bloodmoon. Jen climbed into her rucksack, locked her car and, after a moment of breathing in the fresh air and appreciating the view of steel blue water glinting in the evening sun, approached the log cabin style store. Car park grit crackled beneath her hiking boots. Lake Dwellers Supplies. Last store on the trail for 15 miles, the hand-painted sign over the door declared. To the side of the entrance hung another sign. Bait, supplies, Lake Dwellers mementos. Jen pushed open the door, stepped inside, and a bell on a coil tinkled. She slipped off her rucksack and rested it up against the planked wall. The shop attendant emerged from a room at the back, jaw chomping, a half-eaten peanut butter and jam sandwich in one hand, a plate in the other. Dark eyes looked Jen up and down from under the thick brows and a fawn baseball cap. Help ya? I'm hoping you got some bread and stuff for a fry-up. The attendant put the sandwich and plate down and wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. Can do you some rolls, eggs, can of beans, canned sausages, margarine, that's about it. Don't keep meat on the premises. Attracts the wildlife, being known to burst in when they're starving. The attendant reached under the counter and placed these items before her. Most people ask about low GI stuff for slow release energy these days. We have oats, cans of evaporated milk, energy bars. Jen looked around the store. The walls were covered with maps, posters of camping gear, and pyrographed wooden signs saying things like, I survived the lake dwellers. She approached the counter to get the food, making the floorboards groan. Planning on doing some fishing? Many people eat what they catch. No, said Jen. She handed over the money for the supplies, went over to her rucksack and stowed them. What's all this about lake dwellers? I don't see anything about it in the guidebook. The attendant snorted and waved a hand dismissing the idea as nonsense. My husband's way of drumming up a little extra business, like Area 51 or Bigfoot. Decided we should have our own Loch Nessie. Some hikers, like you, disappeared. They found their tents doing a Marie Celeste. Nothing disturbed by the lakeside. No sign of any bodies. Not even footprints. No sign, that is, till they floated to the surface a few months later. The words being food for the lake life. Jen's eyes widened. She pointed at 3 posters on the wall, depicting huge dark monsters with cat-like green eyes about to pounce on people running away from tents. Lake dwellers? Nothing like that. Pike and eels and such. Jen hauled her rucksack onto her shoulders. The attendant smiled. Planning on camping overnight? Word of advice. Don't pitch your tent too close to the lake edge. It's a temptation, so you can hear the lap of the water, but her head cocked to one side and she broke into a smile. It's my theory that chill comes in off the lake, causing exposure. Makes you do crazy things, exposure. Some people believe their skin is burning. Jen's plan was to walk all around the lake over Saturday and Sunday morning, then drive home in the late afternoon to prepare for work on Monday. There were 2 trails heading away from the store. One veered off and more or less hugged the lake perimeter. The other headed out into the national park and ended who knew where. She didn't care. She liked rivers, lakes, and oceans. She walked the path around the lake for an hour or so, until the summer sun's position told her that it would be dark within the next 90 minutes. A little while earlier, she had passed what some people might call a tiny beach at the side of the trail. She retraced her steps. It would be a decent place to set up camp for the night. The beach was pebbles and shingle, hopefully firm enough to hold her tent pegs. Since it was summer, the warning about the cold draft coming in off the lake would not be anything to take heed of, and her sleeping bag would keep her warm anyway. Some 30 minutes later, everything was set up, and she was stirring her meal over the stove, waiting for the mixture to bubble. Not the fry-up she'd envisaged, but after the evening's tramping, she didn't care. She was hungry to the point of fainting. She could be preparing mushed up baby food for all she cared. It would be every bit as welcome. She squatted on a triangular folding stool, a little larger than a bike saddle, and took in the surroundings while she spooned beans into her mouth. The view of the lake was perfect. A twilight hush had descended, and with it, a drop in temperature and humidity. She didn't usually use words like idyllic, because they reminded her of poetry classes at school, which she detested. But she had to admit, it pretty much summed up what she felt right now. Winged evening insects skittered about. A waterscape framed by trees left and right where the beach ended. On the lake's surface, bubbles formed and popped. Concentric rings rippled and overlapped, as though invisible stones had been dropped onto the surface. Fish hunting for pond skates, she thought. She didn't want the mood to break, but she found herself going over the next day's planned hike again. It was supposed to take a full day to go right round, but she didn't want to go home until Sunday. She was a fast walker, however, and travelled light. She'd probably be done by 5 in the evening tomorrow. A little later if she went for a dip. The question was, did she want to hike around twice and possibly exhaust herself? The guide didn't mention any places to pitch a tent, not even this one. What if there were no more handy spots before she finished her walk? She shrugged. This was only an hour from where she'd left her car. If she found nowhere else, she could always return here tomorrow. Find some nettles and make some soup even. Stay till Sunday, then go home when it felt right. Something glistened out in the middle of the lake, breaking her train of thought. Difficult to tell exactly what. It looked like a tiny boat of some sort. Night anglers, probably. Some fish are either nocturnal or don't sleep, she'd heard. Except, yeah, definitely a boat. Damp sides reflecting light from the setting sun. Must have gotten out there while she was focused on getting her meal. She certainly hadn't noticed it earlier. Could have a motor of some sort. But wouldn't you have heard it? Light was fading now. It would be totally dark in around 20 minutes. The evening silence was burst by a shrill from a bird nearby. It sounded like a mixture of anger and warning. She heard a flapping of wings as if the owner were trying to beat off something rather than fly. Response came from over the lake. This, Jen, is what you came for. Let the weekend be packed with moments like this. As if chasing the cry of the bird, a gentle chill blew in from the lake. She placed her food on the pebbles, crawled back into her tent, and extracted her rain cover from the rucksack. She wrapped it around her shoulders and got back on her stool. The stool sank a little into the pebbles. When she was ready, she picked up her meal to the side where the flapping of wings had come from. A movement registered in her peripheral